Our top story for you on this Friday at 5. Members of the Georgia House of Representatives threatened with arrest during a protest at the state capitol today.
It happened just after a controversial election bill moved one step closer toward a vote next week. 11 Alive's Doug Richards has more.
It started when the House Rules Committee gave routine approval to a Republican election bill. Afterward, the fireworks started.
Think about Selma, Alabama. We all saw what happened. We're reliving that moment today.
This protest was loud in volume, modest in size, as opponents of Republican election bills gathered in the Capitol Rotunda. Within a few minutes, they attracted the attention of at least one state trooper, and as they moved into a higher visibility area of the Capitol, they drew more attention from state troopers. The protest was over election bills that would restrict early voting, add requirements for absentee ballots, and other measures. Republicans say they would enhance election security. With the state Senate still in session, a trooper with a bullhorn warned the protesters they faced arrest.
You are in violation of 1611-34.1.
When State Representative Park Cannon put her head in front of the bullhorn, another trooper grabbed her left elbow.
You must disperse immediately or you will be arrested.
As I stood on the stairs of the state capitol, a Capitol police officer touched me. He put his hands on me, and I moved away.
The standoff was brief as troopers quickly got orders to back away. Democrats joined Cannon in what eventually turned into a sit-in on the staircase and a standoff that will probably get a mention or two when the House election bill gets debated next week.
That officer touched me in public, and he needs to apologize in public.
The legislative pace here at the Capitol will get accelerated next week. The legislature passed a resolution to adjourn on March 31st.